Hey movie lovers, welcome back to Globewise Entertainment, your one-stop spot for deep dives, hidden gems, and all things cinema. Today, we're rewinding to the totally tubular 80s to uncover 10 movie flops that crashed at the box office, but are now straight-up classics. These films may have bombed back in the day, but now? They're fan favorites, cult hits, and in some cases, absolute masterpieces. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and join the Globewise crew. Don't miss out on weekly drops packed with film facts, nostalgia, and surprises. Let's dive in. 1. Blade Runner, 1982, from box office dud to sci-fi royalty. In 1982, moviegoers walked into theaters expecting another thrilling Harrison Ford blockbuster, and walked out confused, underwhelmed, or just plain bored. Blade Runner, directed by Ridley Scott, was too slow, too moody, and way too cerebral for many audiences at the time. It was released just weeks after E.T., a feel-good alien story, while Blade Runner gave us bleak rain-soaked dystopias, synthetic humans, and existential dread. Critics were split. Audiences shrugged. And the box office? Barely broke even. But oh, how time changes things. Over the years, Blade Runner became a blueprint. Its haunting vision of the future, combined with Vangelis' ethereal synth score and jaw-dropping visuals, would go on to define the cyberpunk genre. Entire generations of filmmakers, Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, even the Wachowskis, have cited it as an influence. What once looked like a broken-down noir experiment is now considered one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time. Lesson? Just because a movie flops doesn't mean it's forgotten. Sometimes, it's just ahead of its time. 2. The Thing, 1982, from frozen failure to horror royalty. Back in 1982, The Thing wasn't just cold, it was ice cold at the box office. Critics panned it. Audiences? They wanted heartwarming aliens like E.T., not shape-shifting nightmares from the Arctic. Universal Pictures watched John Carpenter's horror masterpiece get buried under bad reviews and even worse ticket sales. At the time, many called it too gory, too bleak, and too depressing. But time has a funny way of revealing the truth. Because what The Thing lacked in initial applause, it made up for in pure cinematic craft. The atmosphere? Paranoia turned up to 11. The effects? Still stomach-churning today, all thanks to Rob Bottin's legendary practical work. And that ending? Chilling. Literally. As years passed, fans and critics slowly thawed. Today, The Thing isn't just a cult classic, it's often cited as one of the greatest horror films of all time. From flop to favorite, this one aged like a bottle of scotch left in the snow. 3. Heathers, 1989, too dark to handle. Until it became a cult classic. When Heathers hit theaters in 1989, it didn't just flop, it confused people. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Audiences weren't ready for a teen movie that mixed murder, suicide, and high school popularity with dark-as-midnight humor and icy-cool delivery. Starring a young Winona Ryder as the disillusioned Veronica Sawyer and Christian Slater as the dangerously charismatic J.D., Heathers was like nothing else in theaters at the time. It wasn't the sweet, peppy high school movie people were expecting, it was Mean Girls meets Fight Club, years before either existed. With lines like, "What's your damage?" and "I use my grand IQ to decide what lip gloss to wear in the morning," the movie felt razor-sharp, bitterly funny, and completely out of step with the bubblegum tone of most 80s teen fare. Add in stylized dialogue, surreal tone, and unapologetic satire, and it was just too much for the mainstream. But then, something wild happened. Home video and midnight screenings brought it back to life. A new generation found it. Teens who felt like outsiders, goths, punks, anyone tired of cliques and clichés. It became a secret handshake for those who saw through the shiny high school surface. Today, Heathers is considered one of the most influential teen films of all time. It inspired musicals, TV adaptations, fashion, and even dialogue in other teen movies. It walked so Euphoria, Jawbreaker, and Riverdale could run. 4. Big Trouble in Little China, 1986. Box office, busted. Cult status, untouchable. Back in 1986, Big Trouble in Little China hit theaters with a bang, and then face-planted. Directed by genre master John Carpenter and starring Kurt Russell as Jack Burton, a loudmouth truck driver with more swagger than sense, the film blended martial arts, Chinese mysticism, fantasy monsters, and buddy comedy chaos. Sounds amazing now, right? Well, in the 80s, audiences didn't know what to make of it. Critics were confused. The marketing didn't help. Was it an action flick? A comedy? A supernatural adventure? The answer, yes. But without a clear label, it bombed hard, barely making back its budget. But time? Time has been very kind. In the years that followed, Big Trouble built a cult following like few others. Fans embraced the absurdity, the offbeat humor, the wild effects, and Russell's gloriously useless hero. Jack Burton doesn't save the day, he sort of stumbles through it, and that's the joke. The film was way ahead of its time in both tone and genre mashing. Today, it's hailed as a cult masterpiece, with midnight screenings, merch, cosplay, and a fiercely loyal fanbase. What once was a confusing mess is now recognized as a brilliantly weird ride. 5. Labyrinth, 1986. When Labyrinth hit theaters in 1986, audiences didn't quite know what to make of it. A teenage girl, a talking worm, a baby-napping goblin king in glam rock tights, and an entire cast of Jim Henson puppets? Yeah, it was a little out there. Despite a visionary team that included Henson, George Lucas as executive producer, and David Bowie in all his androgynous, magical glory, Labyrinth was a box office disappointment, barely making back its budget. Critics were confused. Audiences were puzzled. Some even thought it was too weird for kids, but too childish for adults. But as the years passed, something magical happened. Sparkles the film didn't disappear, it grew. A generation raised on VHS and midnight screenings discovered its charm. They fell in love with the quirky characters, fantastical sets, and Bowie's unforgettable performance as Jareth the Goblin King. The soundtrack became iconic. Cosplay exploded. And the film became a cult phenomenon. Today, Labyrinth is hailed as a cornerstone of 80s fantasy cinema. It's taught us that being weird isn't a flaw, it's the magic. So yeah, it flopped. But Labyrinth found its way out of the maze, and straight into our hearts. 6. The Last Starfighter, 1984, a cult classic in the stars. When The Last Starfighter hit theaters in 1984, it didn't exactly shoot to the top of the box office charts. In fact, it largely flew under the radar, earning just a fraction of its budget. But over the years, this film has evolved from a box office flop into one of the most beloved cult classics of its time, and for good reason. The movie centers on Alex Rogan, a teenager from a small town who spends his free time playing a video game at a local trailer park. What Alex doesn't realize is that the game he's obsessively playing is actually a recruitment tool for an intergalactic defense force. When he achieves the highest score, he's recruited to fight in an actual space war, saving an entire alien civilization from an evil empire. Though the concept of a video game leading to real-life space battles seems like a perfect match for the sci-fi-loving 80s, The Last Starfighter wasn't well received upon release. Critics were mixed, and the movie struggled to find an audience. At the time, audiences preferred more traditional space operas like Star Wars or E.T., and The Last Starfighter's low-budget special effects and cheesy dialogue weren't enough to impress. However, this movie's legacy wasn't sealed by its initial failure. It was its unique premise and its groundbreaking use of CGI that began to capture the imagination of viewers in the years that followed. For its time, the special effects were ahead of the curve, particularly in how they used early computer-generated imagery, CGI, to create the spacecraft and alien environments. The visual effects weren't as polished as what would come later, but they were ambitious and groundbreaking, earning the film a special place in the hearts of sci-fi fans. What really helped The Last Starfighter find its way to cult status was its themes of escape, adventure, and the idea that a kid from a small town could be thrust into something larger than life. It captured the dreams of a generation of gamers, dreamers, and geeks, offering a sense of empowerment and possibility that resonated far beyond its initial box office performance. In the years following its release, the film's nostalgic charm only grew. It became a favorite on home video and later, DVD, and The Last Starfighter became a pivotal entry in the conversation about gaming culture and the intersection of technology and entertainment. It was one of the first films to really connect the rising popularity of video games with the world of cinema, and it paved the way for future films about gamers, tech, and virtual worlds. Today, The Last Starfighter is hailed as an early example of what would come to define the gaming and tech-centric films of the 90s and beyond. And while it didn't win Oscars or dominate the box office in the 80s, its enduring influence and beloved status are undeniable. Fans still reminisce about the film's quirky characters, space battles, and Alex's heroic journey. If you've ever been a gamer or dreamt of something bigger than your small-town life, then this film speaks to you. In short, The Last Starfighter is one of those rare movies that defied its original fate. It proved that a film doesn't need box office success to become a classic, it just needs heart, vision, and a little bit of cosmic magic. 7. Clue, 1985, The Mystery That Made Us Laugh. When Clue was first released in 1985, it seemed like it had all the makings of a hit, based on the beloved board game, an ensemble cast of comedy stars, and a murder mystery with plenty of twists. So why did it flop at the box office? Well, the marketing strategy may have been part of the problem. The film was released with 3 different endings, and audiences didn't quite know how to take that. It felt like a gimmick rather than a reason to buy a ticket. Plus, the film's blend of slapstick humor and mystery was a bit too ahead of its time for mainstream audiences. People didn't really know whether to take it seriously or just laugh at its outrageousness. At the time of release, Clue didn't manage to turn a profit, and its reviews were mixed. Some called it too silly, while others couldn't quite grasp the quirky tone. In fact, it was largely overlooked as just another strange 80s film trying to cash in on a board game. However, over time, Clue gained a reputation as a cult classic. What was initially misunderstood as a chaotic mess started to be appreciated for what it was, a hilarious, witty, and incredibly fun ride through a series of absurd twists and turns. The script, loaded with sharp dialogue and fantastic comedic timing, became more beloved with each passing year. The film's ensemble cast, led by Tim Curry, Christopher Lloyd, Madeline Kahn, and Leslie and Warren, became iconic. Tim Curry's performance as the butler, Wadsworth, is nothing short of legendary. His delivery, mannerisms, and comedic timing turned the character into one of the most memorable in film history. And let's not forget Madeline Kahn's unforgettable portrayal of Mrs. White, whose emotional outbursts and hilarious one-liners became an instant hit with fans. The real genius of Clue is in how it embraces the silliness of the source material while also playing it straight. It's a murder mystery with all the right ingredients for fun, plenty of suspects, eccentric characters, a mansion full of dark secrets, and of course, multiple endings. The fact that the film offered audiences different endings in theaters only added to its charm, though many missed out on the gimmick at the time. Eventually, Clue found its true audience when it hit home video. People could now watch it on repeat, dissecting the plot, quoting lines, and discovering just how clever and hilarious the film truly was. It was no longer a flop, it was a film everyone wanted to experience over and over. Today, Clue is celebrated as a genre-defining comedy. Its quotable lines, unforgettable performances, and quirky charm have made it an essential part of 80s cinema. And while it didn't land with audiences in the theater, Clue certainly found its place in the hearts of movie lovers everywhere. It may have been a box office flop, but it's now a movie classic, embraced for its unique blend of humor and mystery. 8. Manhunter, 1986, the cult classic that redefined thrillers. When Manhunter hit theaters in 1986, it was largely overshadowed by bigger films of the era. Directed by Michael Mann, who had made a name for himself with the stylish crime drama Miami Vice, Manhunter was an early adaptation of Thomas Harris's Red Dragon, which would later become more famous when it was re-released in the Hannibal Lecter series, especially with The Silence of the Lambs in 1991. But at the time of its release, Manhunter flopped. Critics didn't know what to make of its cold, almost detached pacing and its distinctive visual style. The film's nuanced psychological tension, rather than explosive action, left audiences confused. Manhunter starred William Peterson as FBI profiler Will Graham, who tracks down the psychopathic killer Francis Dollarhide, played by Tom Noonan. While the acting was strong and the plot was intriguing, the film was too unconventional for mainstream tastes at the time. The chilling, atmospheric direction felt more like a slow burn than an edge-of-your-seat thriller. Audiences were simply not ready for it. Why it's loved now? Over time, Manhunter found its place as a cult classic. Today, it's considered a masterpiece of psychological horror and crime thriller filmmaking. Michael Mann's meticulous attention to detail in crafting the film's visual style, using neon lighting, dreamlike imagery, and a haunting score by Michel Rubini, has since been praised for creating a mood that is both eerie and captivating. The film's cool, clinical atmosphere has become a hallmark of Mann's work, influencing future thrillers. The character of Hannibal Lecter, played by Brian Cox in Manhunter, was much different from Anthony Hopkins' more flamboyant portrayal in The Silence of the Lambs, but Cox's more subdued, intellectual version left an indelible mark. The film's psychological depth, paired with its understated tension, would lay the groundwork for the success of later films in the genre. Impact and legacy. In the years since its release, Manhunter has been recognized as a groundbreaking thriller that paved the way for the modern genre of psychological crime dramas. The film's blend of horror, crime, and psychological suspense has been cited as a major influence on filmmakers such as David Fincher, particularly in his film Seven, 1995. Manhunter has also found a new audience thanks to its availability on home video and streaming services, with viewers rediscovering its unique style and complex characters. What was once deemed a box office failure is now revered for its layered storytelling, its methodical pacing, and its ability to delve into the darkest recesses of the human mind. Its place as a cult favorite continues to grow, proving that sometimes, the movies that bomb at first can later find their rightful place as timeless classics. Manhunter stands as a prime example of a film that was ahead of its time, proving that, in the world of cinema, a flop can often become a treasure with the right perspective. And for thriller lovers, Manhunter remains one of the most influential films to ever explore the terrifying dance between hunter and hunted. 9. The Adventures of Buckaroo Bonsai Across the Eighth Dimension, 1984. When The Adventures of Buckaroo Bonsai Across the Eighth Dimension hit theaters in 1984, it was as if the movie was from an entirely different universe, one where sci-fi, adventure, comedy, and rock music all collided into one chaotic, eccentric masterpiece. Unfortunately, audiences at the time didn't know what to make of it. Directed by W.D. Richter, this wild ride featured Peter Weller in the title role of Buckaroo Bonsai, a neurosurgeon, physicist, rock star, and adventurer all rolled into one. Alongside his eclectic crew of scientists, martial artists, and musicians, Bonsai battles a group of interdimensional aliens who plan to invade Earth. Sounds like a lot to digest, right? Well, it was. At the time of release, the film was a complete box office disaster. It was too quirky, too complex, and its tone swung wildly from absurd humor to science fiction. The marketing was confusing, and audiences who were looking for a traditional action-packed, straightforward blockbuster were left scratching their heads. However, something remarkable happened over time. Buckaroo Bonsai found its audience, first on VHS, then through late-night screenings and word of mouth. What once seemed like an incoherent mess became beloved for precisely that reason. Fans started embracing its offbeat charm, bizarre characters, and endless layers of sci-fi and pop culture references. The movie's dialogue became iconic, its characters memorable, Jeff Goldblum as a quirky ally. Yes, please, and the soundtrack, filled with infectious rock tunes, became a part of the film's enduring appeal. Its oddball premise, while hard to understand at first, became something fans admired for its boldness and creativity. The movie didn't follow any traditional formula, it was a hodgepodge of genres, and that made it unlike anything else. Despite its initial failure, Buckaroo Bonsai earned the ultimate label, a cult classic. It wasn't about whether it was good or bad, it was about embracing the weirdness and the spirit of fun. Today, the adventures of Buckaroo Bonsai across the eighth dimension is a symbol of 1980s movie excess, reminding us that sometimes the most memorable films are the ones that take the biggest risks. Fans still quote it, dress up as Buckaroo Bonsai for conventions, and dream of the rumored sequels that never came. So, what did we learn? That sometimes, a movie doesn't need to succeed at the box office to become a lasting part of pop culture. In fact, Buckaroo Bonsai taught us all that the weirder, the better. 10. Flash Gordon, 1980. The flop. When Flash Gordon hit theaters in 1980, it was anything but a superhero blockbuster. Directed by Mike Hodges, this wild, campy sci-fi film was based on the classic comic strip, but audiences in 1980 weren't quite ready for its over-the-top, psychedelic visuals and colorful, zany storytelling. The film, starring Sam J. Jones as the titular Flash, Max von Sydow as the villain Ming the Merciless, and a ridiculously catchy Queen soundtrack, flopped hard at the box office. Critics were baffled, and moviegoers just weren't sold on its blend of cheesy dialogue, outrageous costumes, and eccentric characters. Flash Gordon didn't fit neatly into the science fiction genre's landscape at the time. Instead of serious space epics like Star Wars, it was more like a comic book come to life, with a sense of fun and irreverence that felt out of place. Its modest $27 million budget couldn't match its high expectations, and it was largely forgotten in the years that followed. The rise to cult status, but the thing about Flash Gordon was this, its heart. The film's wild campiness and unapologetic embrace of its own weirdness became exactly what made it so endearing. Over time, the film found a devoted fanbase, with people looking at it through a more nostalgic lens in the 80s and beyond. The film was ahead of its time, blending the goofy charm of vintage superhero serials with the visual style of the 1970s avant-garde. The film's revival began in the home video era, where it found a second life on VHS and cable TV, where fans embraced its absurdity, turning it into a beloved guilty pleasure. The exaggerated performances, wild costumes, and strange visual effects became part of its quirky charm, rather than flaws. The Flash Gordon soundtrack, composed by Queen, also became iconic. Songs like Flash and The Hero resonated with fans and became instantly recognizable in pop culture, turning the music into a critical component of its lasting appeal. Why it's loved now, Flash Gordon is a shining example of how something that flopped can find its place in pop culture as a beloved classic. People love it for its campy vibe, unapologetic fun, and its place in the "so bad it's good" category. It's also influential. Its bold, colorful aesthetic became a touchstone for many filmmakers and artists, particularly in the world of retro sci-fi. Whether it's the quirky characters, the exaggerated action scenes, or the over-the-top villainy of Ming, Flash Gordon has earned its place as a beloved cult classic. It's proof that, sometimes, movies that don't succeed at first can later become timeless, and they're cherished not because they fit the conventional mold, but because they break it in the best possible way. And there you have it, 10 80s movie flops that somehow became absolute classics. From Blade Runner to Flash Gordon, these films prove that sometimes, a little time, and a lot of love, can turn a flop into a favorite. If you enjoyed the trip down memory lane and want more deep dives, movie magic, and hidden gems, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Globewise crew. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time for more cinematic adventures. Stay tuned and keep the popcorn poppin'.